Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to the show. Hope you enjoyed yesterday's show. If you didn't, I can't worry about it. Hey, we have a fantastic show planned for you today. TJ Moe back in town with us in studio for the next 2 or 3 days. That's always awesome. Royce White's going to be back with us today as we circle back. We're going to pound this Pride Month thing. Should I say that we're going to pound Pride Month? That's bad. Let me cut that. We're going to keep I don't want to say hitting either. We're going to keep talking about Pride Month. And so Royce White's going to help us do that today as we try to connect some more dots and tell you what's. And actually, we're going to try to celebrate today. Some good news. Steve Kim's going to be back with us. We'll talk some sports with Steve Kim. And, of course, TJ Moe will be with us here in studio all day. Before I do anything, I just want to take care of one of my favorite people, one of my favorite sponsors, The Purpose, the sponsor that gives us a purpose on this show, our good friends at Preborn. Hey, guys, you know about our mindset here, Fearless Soldiers. We love Preborn because we support life at conception. That's the mindset. How you treat life inside the womb will determine how you treat life outside the womb. It's a mindset that Fearless Soldiers must adopt, and nobody does that better than Preborn. Preborn provides ultrasounds for women, expectant mothers who are contemplating abortion. They introduce them to that baby's heartbeat. They introduce the image of that baby inside the womb, and mothers, once they hear that heartbeat, once they see that image, 70-80% of the time they choose life, and that's when Preborn steps in and provides all the help that woman needs through her first 2 years of life and pregnancy. They provide diapers, everything that a woman needs, the mental support and some of the material goods that a woman needs. Preborn does all of that, and they do it because we, fearless men that accept the responsibility of life beginning at conception, we donate to Preborn. It's just $28 for one ultrasound. 5 ultrasounds, $140. You can give monthly like I do. You can make a one-time donation like I also occasionally do. Whether it's $5, whether it's $25, whether it's $15,000, every dollar counts and every dollar goes directly to helping an expectant mother. It does not go to middle management. It does not go to overpaid executives. That's why we had Dan Steiner, who founded Preborn, on the show. I wanted to meet and know him personally. Preborn, you can trust when you give that money, it goes directly to the cause. All you have to do to give is hit pound 250, see the keyword baby, or you can give the Jason Whitlock way, preborn.com/Jason. Please do it. And when you do, hit me with an email. Let me know you have. That's how we get to do these fearless shows. Preborn is one of the reasons why we get to do these fearless shows. You thought yesterday was fearless? Well, we're going to keep being fearless again today. Let's get to our fire starter. Let's get to our deeper conversation today. The destruction of Bud Light destroyed Pride Month. We should all take a bow. We claimed another important victory in the culture war. It's the second major victory in a calendar year. Last June, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, ending federalized abortion on demand. I have to admit, I'm a bit shocked. I had turned rather cynical and defeatist. Satan conquers the mind and then the body. The forces of evil and immortality want us to believe defeat is inevitable. It is not. Pride Month proves it. We are 6 days into the secular holy holiday of Pride. And so far, it is easily the most understated and quiet kickoff to Pride in a decade. The corporate commercial campaign that usually accompanies this month has retreated. Major corporations fear provoking a Bud Light backlash. On April 1, transgender con man Dylan Mulvaney posted a video on Instagram showing a Bud Light can featuring his image and celebrating his girlhood. The post triggered immediate outrage and anger among conservatives tired of corporate-sponsored LGBTQIA+ activism. Singers Kid Rock and Travis Tritt displayed public outrage. Conservative social media influencers called for a boycott of Bud Light. Anheuser-Busch stock immediately plummeted. Beer drinkers stopped buying Bud. The boycott has cost Anheuser stockholders roughly $15 billion. A month later, retailer Target faced a similar boycott backlash after unveiling tuck-friendly swimwear for kids. Again, I'm shocked. Christians and conservatives have finally figured out an effective way of fighting back in the culture war. Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter has provided traditional Americans a way to mobilize, organize, and push back against progressives and their alphabet mafia. I expected this June to be filled with more culture war fireworks. It hasn't materialized because the alphabet soldiers are running scared. Corporate brands are relatively silent on Pride Month. Yesterday, the Daily Digital ran a story detailing how many major brands have fallen silent this Pride Month via social media when in previous years their feeds were filled with rainbow messaging. This war is not over, but at least now we've learned how to fight back. That's the critical element of any war. Protesting in the streets is not effective. Any public protest involving Christians and/or conservatives will be branded as racist or nationalist. The FBI will plant informants at the rally, label them oath keepers or proud boys, and instruct corporate media shields at Fox News, MSNBC, and CNN to report about the white supremacists who organized an insurrection. Organized. Online boycotts are our best weapon. That's our pivot. They will pivot too. That's what happens in war. Shit rolls downhill. That means more pressure on alphabet foot soldiers. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, ESPN broadcaster Jalen Rose, a former NBA basketball star, interviewed Billy Porter, the flamboyant, cross-dressing actor. Rose positioned Porter as a courageous freedom fighter. Let's watch for ourselves.
One of the hardest things for me as a Black queer person is being rejected by your own. That's the hardest part of this journey.
Yes.
For me. And, you know, I've gotten to the space, blessedly, where to reject me and to ignore me and to dismiss me is to make you look like an idiot. So there was some smart people over there at BET who said, you know what? We might need to start embracing our queer brothers and sisters. There are some people in positions of power now that understand we are all one, and it's time to start talking about that, because none of us are free till we're all free.
So I want to take a moment here and just unpack what you just saw. And I pound this topic constantly because I don't think people fully understand when I talk about racial idolatry. And so here's Billy Porter.
And see, what hurts the most is when you're rejected by your own.
Again, for those of you that claim any religious biblical faith, who owns you? Who are you? Are you owned by the color of your skin, or are you owned by God? And so when you start thinking anything is more important than God claiming you, that's idolatry. He's placed his skin color above approval from God. He thinks being rejected by his own means Black people. those of us that are believers, we don't want to be rejected by God. And that's why we consider homosexuality, adultery, transgenderism, premarital sex. We consider all these sins like a rejection of God and being disloyal to God. And we don't want to be rejected by God. This man is sitting here worried about what Jalen Rose thinks about him and whether he's in the approval of Jalen Rose. This is idolatry. And this is the danger of man thinking he's God. And Jalen Rose sitting there nodding his head, yes, I approve of you, Billy Porter. This is the idolatrous mindset. And idolatry is at the root of all sin. Jalen Rose caught up in racial idolatry and financial idolatry. He's nodding his head and has Billy Porter on that platform because he's trying to protect his money. Money is his idol. This is, I hammer this point constantly because I don't think Christians understand idolatry and don't understand the dangers when you start attaching your identity to all these other things and start placing more value on what Jalen Rose thinks or Jason Whitlock thinks or anybody thinks rather than what's stated in the Bible, the Word of God, God-inspired words in the Bible. Are you in alignment with that? That should be your primary concern. If it's not, you're living in a state of idolatry. Other things, your sexuality, your skin color, your popularity at school, your popularity on social media. That's all idolatry. And I'm not sitting here saying that I've rid myself of all idolatry. I have not. Again, I have an idolatrous relationship with food. I talk all the time, but I'm not in denial about it. And we have to come up out of the denial. They're disconnecting you from God and connecting you to your skin color. Your skin color has no power. Your skin color didn't climb up on a cross and suffer for grace and mercy for your sins. Jesus Christ did that. God sent his only begotten Son to do that. You don't owe any loyalty to your skin color. I know that sounds crazy to many of you because you've been programmed to think that your skin color or money or Jalen Rose or popularity with celebrities is the most important thing. It is not. And so this is how you start abandoning all your biblical values. And this is why so many Black celebrities and just Black people in general have become so secular and so hostile to God. It's because their religion is their skin color. Their religion is where they stick their penis. This man bends over for other men and drops to his knees for other men, and that's more important to him than being in the good graces of God and being obedient to God. Jalen Rose is a puppet for ESPN/Disney and other corporate brands. Corporations will send their individual soldiers to the front lines of the LGBTQ war. That's the pivot. At the moment, it's too high risk for a major corporation to fly the pride flag prominently. It could trigger a boycott. Instead, they will gently nudge individual soldiers to storm the beaches. It's all very subtle and clever. ESPN/Disney is in the process of laying off thousands of employees. An overpriced underachiever such as Jalen Rose is very vulnerable right now. Rose's representatives, his agents, his handlers have instructed him on the best strategy to win favor at Disney. Drop to your knees and swallow every inch of the pride flagpole. Jalen Rose is like a lot of past their prime entertainers. He has no discernible marketable skill. He's not particularly bright. He adds no real value to ESPN. He's addicted to fame and celebrity privilege. There is nothing he's unwilling to do to protect his celebrity status. Bending over for Billy Porter, that's light work for Jalen Rose. Light work, enjoys it. The alphabet mafia is going to emasculate every man that stands with them. It's inevitable. You think you can just do this for a brief moment and survive. You will be emasculated at some point, publicly, privately. You will abandon every value principle that you were raised with if you keep standing with them. This will be another victory for the men and women who choose to stand with God. We don't have to drop to our knees. We get to keep our bats and balls. I entered this month dejected and gloomy. 1 week into it, my optimism has returned. The other side lacks the courage for their alleged convictions. Corporate media or corporate support for the LGBTQ is solely tied to money. The shareholders and owners are not willing to sacrifice a drop of market share to proclaim their belief that Dylan Mulvaney is a woman and that kids need gender mutilating health care. We're fighting cowards. If we lose this war, it says far more about us than them. That's my fire starter. TJ, you know personally how fired up I was about this month. Because I thought, oh, it's gonna be popping. We gotta be ready. It's gonna be all out war. And I'm looking around, I'm looking for people to shoot and kill. And that's what's a bad analogy, but I was just like, that's what I was ready for. And I'm here now, and it's like, oh, they've fallen back. They've retreated.
Pushed off your vacation for no reason.
Yes, literally. I was like, we got to work all Pride Month. It's going to be crazy. I'm going to be, just at war with everybody, and there's going to be boycotts to launch, and everybody's scared and ran off.
Well, it tells you a little courage goes a long way. It took 2 boycotts for everybody else to run off. And they were big boycotts. I mean, I've seen, you said $15 billion in market cap for Anheuser-Busch. I read that 2 weeks ago. I've seen most recently $27 billion.
Gotcha.
And the Target is down around $15 billion as well. And so they're getting hammered. Target is one of the most regressive, we'll say, corporations out there. They were the first people, back when we were talking 2017-18, about the transgender bathroom stuff, they were one of the first people to go, our bathrooms are for everybody, go wherever you want. They've been selling chest binders to young girls for years, and they backed off. All their Pride stuff's gone. They put it in the back, and they got so many threats from people, they took it all out. So when Target's caving, they're the leader of the crazies.
Royce, I'm feeling optimistic, like maybe we got a little wind at our back here. When I look at the last June, they overturned Roe v. Wade, and this June, we appear to be overturning Pride Month. Is my optimism misplaced?
It's always good to be optimistic. I'm more of a military-minded strategist, and what we're seeing, I think, is that many of the corporations, a lot of the impulse around the corporate pushing, the corporate agenda is still going to be market driven. It's still going to be driven primarily by money. All of it is a testing ground. All of this psyop, all of this brainwashing is an experiment to see how much the people will tolerate. And when I take people back to this history again. When the Civil Rights Act was passed, there was a moment where the communists wanted to use the Civil Rights Act to take over this country. And some people would argue that they did. In some ways, they got their teeth in, but free market enterprise held the day. People were still more interested in an upward economic mobility than they were in this idea that everybody deserves everything. So capitalism won then, and right now capitalism is showing to be holding strong again. But I caution in this sense. Let's not forget that it's not about the money. I think a lot of Republicans, a lot of conservatives get caught up. Yes, we live under a corporatocracy. I've said it many times. But the real power of the corporatocracy, the real sword that they wield, is that they don't need the money. They don't need the money. I mean, and that's the whole scam here is, look weak where you're strong and look strong where you're weak. They don't need to sell you LGBT pride goods. That's just a way to piss on you and tell you it's raining. They have our schools. They have the minds of our children. What our white liberal suburban moms want to buy for their kid at Target is really indifferent. I mean, that's more of a right now, a more present, current political circumstance, right? It's like, who's going to vote LGBTQ in the next election 18 months from now? But the real pernicion is that they have our children's minds. And they are showing scientifically, from a data standpoint, that 18 to 30-year-olds are identifying as LGBTQ 20% higher after coming through this scholastic brainwashing. So hold our horses is what I'm saying. Hold our horses.
I agree with you that you're making, because I did think about that this morning when I was thinking through this, like, okay, so how do we execute this strategy as it relates to our schools? We're getting some corporate wins here. We backed them off Pride Month, blah, blah, blah. But if they're still indoctrinating our kids, and then here's the other thing, because what a lot of married people are saying is, I'm going to educate my own kids. I'm going to pull them up out of school, and we're going to educate at home. Then, and I don't want to sound racially idolatrous, but when I think about black people and I think about our marriage rate, and we don't have that option. If 75, 80% of your kids are in single parent homes, you can't homeschool. Somebody's got to go out and work. And so that's where we're very vulnerable in that aspect.
Well, let's take it a step further, because, again, what I like about it is that the American people that need to embrace, support, commit to an idea of an alternative economy, a patriot economy, as it's called in the America First or MAGA movement, those people have responded corporately. They've responded with their dollars, and that's a good sign. And that, I mean, that's a hopeful and optimistic starting block for what we need to do across the spectrum. But the real scam is a money scam. I always say, and again, when I say they don't need the money, all of the major corporations, all of the stakeholders, all of the interlocutors, as Joe Biden would call it, of the New World Order or the Fourth Industrial Revolution or this global economy, all of these corporations know one fact. At the end of the day, if their business goes bankrupt, the Fed, the big banks, other people who are financial hedge funds and things of that nature, they will come in and cannibalize any companies that still have value, and they'll get some big payday even if they go out of business. This is the moral hazard that the Federal Reserve created when they turned on the taps of liquidity and ran up this infinite national debt. And it's perfect. Again, propagandas, not just lies. It's lies. It's the truth out of context and half truth. What's the biggest news of the day? What's the biggest news right now in American politics? It's the debt ceiling. It's the debt ceiling. And here everybody is focused on the LGBTQ. Why? Because they know the money is the juice. The money in the military is the juice. They're going to continue to print money. The Republicans, the rhinos, the McCarthys, just gave Joe Biden a $1.6 trillion debt ceiling raise with no cap. They could literally spend as much money as they want to try and defeat the Russians, which they'll never be able to do. But they're going to spend your money. And the reason why I say that is it's not just them. It's the corporations they're in alignment with. So the agenda is moving forward as planned. The people are starting to reject it on the surface, and that's a good rumbling. But we have a long, long way to go.
Royce, I wanted your thoughts on just, I've known Jalen Rose since he was 19 years old. Mm-hmm. And I've known Shannon Sharpe since very early in his NFL career. He and Tony Gonzalez were great friends. He and Derek Thomas were friends. These are guys in Kansas City that, I covered and was close to and would run into Shannon. So I've known all these guys. And I'm looking at Jalen Rose, the kid from Detroit, 19. I never saw him as if we went back 25 or however many years ago that was, 30 years ago, I just didn't see him kissing the rear end of Billy Porter on some podcast or some interview. But this is what it takes to survive in this corporate media space when you're vulnerable financially. And then I look at Shannon Sharpe, I've known him forever, and this dude's BFF runs around all, and again, I'm not telling people, hey, you can't have gay friends or whatever, but a big part of Shannon's brand is the gay dude that outed Kerry Rhodes, the NFL safety who was in the closet and had this gay assistant who, told on him and outed him and said, hey, we were in a gay affair. That's who Shannon's stylist is now. That's who he's running around with, promoting on Instagram and every place, and just sitting courtside with him at Lakers games. And there's like this requirement among athletes that you must be over the top LGBTQ friendly in a public way, or you're vulnerable. I mean, they call me a sellout, but there's no price tag on my support.
Jason, I thought I was doing well being measured and reasonable, and you want to take me to the black bourgeoisie homoerotic sellouts. Okay, proceed, my friend. Let's do it. All right. Look. Before I go there, let me try and stay on track today. I'm not gonna let Whitlock. You're slick with that. Yeah, I'm getting on you in the group chat. You always want to send me off. I know what's going on here. I'm not going for it today. All right, let's try and put some guardrails back around this LGBTQ wedge issue politically, because I think there are two camps of people. There are two camps of people across the spectrum in any of these issues. When it comes to the LGBTQ movement, there are two different groups of people. There are people who have totally surrendered to radical materialism and corporatism and all of this anti-God philosophy that ends in that sort of Luciferian satanic political bent. They're anti-God. They don't just say there is no God. We want to destroy and sever God's connection with man. Okay, so that's one bucket of the LGBTQ movement. There's another bucket of the LGBTQ movement. And while I don't agree with the 501c3 Christian churches, which are mostly Protestant, by the way, as well as the pedophilia that was allowed into the Catholic Church after Vatican II, which tried to make the Catholic Church more Protestant. They're on the record saying that. That was Pope John Paul. Anyway, there's another bucket of LGBTQ people who identify as Christian, who want to be accepted by Christians, who want to be accepted in the church, who want to be accepted in society. And I'm not saying that I agree with their lifestyle, but what I'm saying is this. All the easy decisions are behind us. All the easy answers are behind us. There needs to be leaders that step up and make very sound and rational decisions, draw very rational and sane lines around what's acceptable from the LGBTQ. And we have to thread the needle now because this thing's gotten out of control. Right? We have to thread that needle between our Christian and our spiritual faith and the political reality. The political reality is we don't want the church to have blind authority. I would agree with that. I certainly don't want the Catholic Church to have blind authority, and I don't want the 501c3 Protestants to have blind authority. I would agree with that. We want to keep our citizenship what it is. There is a difference between a gay, lesbian man saying, hey, listen, this is a lifestyle that's out here. We exist. We're struggling with our identity. We're trying to find ourselves in this identity. We may be doing it in a way that you don't agree with or that your faith doesn't agree with. We want to be able to still have rights. We want to still be able to exist. We want to still be able to live without fear of genocide or persecution or execution or whatever. That's fine. When you go to teach a 3-year-old that he should cut his penis off, or a 4-year-old, or a 5-year-old, or even an 18-year-old, when you're Joe Biden or St. John Pierre, the other black bourgeoisie sellout, when you go to stand on the podium in front of the entire world and say, there's no such thing as somebody else's child, we got a big problem, okay? And this is where the line should be clearly and distinguishably drawn. And I say that because I don't want to let the establishment, the purveyors of the status quo, the uniparty, the Republicans and Democrats that mean to pit black against white, now black, white against the rainbow while they make off with the money, the green. I don't want to let them use this LGBTQ wedge issue to make Republicans unelectable. Like we want to kill every lesbian and gay person, or we want to throw every lesbian and gay person in jail. No, what we don't agree with is that there's any acceptable place for minor attracted people. And they will use the DSM, they will use the LGBTQ, they will use sexual promiscuity to normalize abhorrent behavior beyond two men who say they love each other. I mean, that's not my business. I just don't have any interest in that. But you're not going to take my son, and I'm getting around to my Jalen Rose point. I don't mean to be long-winded. Now I'm going to say something that's personal. If these sellout like Jalen and LeBron and Shannon Sharp and all of them think this is cool because it bodes well for their pocket now, wait till Child Protective Services is wielded against them when they don't affirm something that was taught LGBTQ at the public school. That's coming. That's what's coming next. And that's going to be the declaration of war. They're going to start to say, if parents don't affirm the LGBTQ gender theory that's taught and supported in the school system, we're going to send Child Protective Services with carte blanche that have already had carte blanche for far too long, in my opinion. Now they're going to incorporate the LGBTQ in the scope of Child Protective Services. They're already saying it. This isn't a conspiracy theory. They're saying it. They're going to use CPS. Then let's see how friendly Jalen Rose is to the gender theory. Nobody's saying we want to execute and round up gay and lesbian people, but the agenda is clearly aimed at our children, and that's why the Pride parade there in Florida, when they said they wouldn't let them deal with children, they said, oh, we're not having it then. There's something to that. If you don't want to do your Pride rituals or your Pride celebration because it doesn't extend to minors, there's a little bit of a pedophilic bent, not a little bit, a huge one. And Jalen Rose and them they won't know it until it knocks on their door and knocks them over the head like Tyrese. Tyrese is another example, not in the LGBTQ, but on the family court side. He's always been in there in Hollywood, shilling, doing whatever it takes to let the white liberal Hollywood elites pat him on the back and give him money until the family court came after him for child support out there in California. Then he's crying online asking for all the black people, Ben Crump and all, to come help him. It's going to be the same thing when the LGBTQ comes for Jalen Rose and whoever else's kids.
I'm glad you went here, Royce, because it offers me a chance to clarify and seek a deeper understanding of my own position, because I'm certainly not someone that wants to return to what was commonplace in my childhood. This is where I don't want any parts of. Guys that were feminine were mistreated in school when I was growing up. I don't want any parts of that. I didn't want any parts of it then. I didn't participate in that then, but it was commonplace. If you were feminine, and I can think of, this kid has passed. He went to my high school. I think his name was Leander Smalls. He's now passed and dead. And I thought about how he was treated in high school and ostracized, and he was very feminine, and that's not, I don't want any parts of that. I think that's unfair, and I understand why there's been a push to like, hey, let's not, this culture we have of abuse towards guys that are feminine or, you know, out of the closet gay when they're kid, don't want any parts of that. But, and again, I've said many, many times, what has gotten me fired up is this movement of like sexualizing kids, adults sexualizing kids. That's the line that's just way too far, and it's like we've gone way too far the other direction. Leander Smalls or whoever else, we should protect them and make sure they have a good childhood experience where they're not facing abuse. But the correction isn't for blue-haired teachers to come in and start having sex talks with 8 years old, 10 years old, 14-year-olds. Parents should do that. And that's why, and this whole celebration of you know, everybody walking to school and we're celebrating the rainbow flag and gay pride and all that, that's a bridge too far. But I will say that, and I almost wish Bryson were here today, because he'd take a much harder line approach and perhaps create a better discussion, because I can't put my finger on it, but I do think the slippery slope argument is true in terms of like, I'm not comfortable with gay marriage.
Yep.
It's like, I would like to see that repealed, because I don't think it's healthy for the country. And once you start, and I've said it multiple times, and this is where I'm sure the LGBT people that are watching or are friends with or you know, whatever, they got a problem with me, is because I'm just not in support of same-sex marriage. That creates the slippery slope, and it's a step towards delusion. And what I mean by that is, and I've said it multiple times on this show, not everything is for everybody. And so I crack a joke and say, look, man, I'd love to wear size 32 skinny jeans. They're not for me, and I can't be mad at the world. I've seen these fat people do these videos of themselves on airplanes and say they need to make bigger seats and blah, blah. I don't believe in that. I believe in losing weight and paying the consequences of obesity. I believe in that. And so not everything, there's some choices you make. For me, when I was younger, when I sit, and trust me, I have deep regrets about my mentality when I was younger, and I've talked about it on this show. I feel like God, when I look back at my life, God sent me 2 or 3 women that were perfect for me for marriage. I wasn't in the right mentality. And so there were decisions I made, and very complicated. There's a whole little pie chart of how I blew up these relationships, and there's little bits and pieces, but part of the reason I blew it up is because, like, I was a Christian. At that time, I had Christian values that I was aware of, not to the level I got now, but I did not believe in monogamy. And so in my mind, I would be dealing with a woman who I knew, like, man, God done sent me exactly what I wanted, but I'm not going to lie to her and tell her, yeah, I'm gonna be monogamous, when I had no plans of being monogamous. And I don't wanna, I know people, I'm gonna call them people, not friends. I know people that went into marriages with no intention of being monogamous. I never had any respect for that. What's one of the main things I tell you, TJ, about my whole philosophy on men, is that if a guy is comfortable lying to his wife, he will lie to me, you, and everybody else without a moment's thought.
All right.
And so, and I got friends that, I'm sorry, I don't have friends. I know people who lie to their wife, and they have no idea that I'm sitting there going, well, lying to me is easy. And so so anyway, I've said a lot. TJ, I want you to jump it because there's certain things I want to be repealed while still being fair to the LGBTQ crowd or the LGB. I think maybe only the L's and the G's are basically, and probably B's.
The gay trans crowd.
Well, I'm not concerned about the trans crowd. I don't have them figured out. I don't know what to do about them. They need mental help.
Yes, they do. They need psych wards.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I think Bryson would tell you they should go to jail or be killed. I don't think he'd tell you to be killed, but he's pretty hardcore Old Testament scriptural. And so what I would tell you to talk about two things. Marriage, when you define marriage for all of mankind has been a man and a woman. That's it. We redefine the word. You can't just go around redefining words and then call that what it is and assume everybody's on board with it. And so all we're saying is let's go with human history and all what it's been forever. If you want to, I'm not suggesting you should go to jail. I'm certainly not suggesting you should be killed, but I'm not going to acknowledge something that doesn't exist. And that would be two men lying together and calling it a marriage. And so that's what I'm saying. Let's go back to that.
Well, Royce's point that I want Royce to circle back in on is, and it's one that I don't concern myself that much with. People love to call me political, love to call me conservative. I'm not, and so I don't care about political consequences. Royce is concerned that conservatives, Christian people, we're going to pay a high political cost if we draw too bright of a line in the sand with the LGBTQ crowd. Am I being accurate, Royce, with your concern?
Again, I'll say it this way. My only thing is this: the line where the LGBTQ movement has come versus where it started is a stark contrast. And I think sane and reasonable people can rightfully identify the slippery slope and say it's part of one agenda. But we show a lack of discernment, a lack of faith, and a lack of moral and ethical courage when we say it's got to be all or nothing. I'm not an all or nothing kind of guy. I'm not lukewarm. My yes is a no, and my yes is a yes, and my no is a no. And I absolutely think that God is not happy with the LGBTQ lifestyle, not necessarily for its sexual abomination. I think that God intends for many of these people to have children. Many of the gay and lesbian people that I know, some in my family, some I went to high school with, so on and so forth, they'll never know the miracle, the charity, the grace, the mercy of having a child. And many of them are decent people. I would love to see there be more people like them in the world, and they'll never be able to know that because of the lifestyle choice from a biological standpoint. So I think that's the number one reason that God condemned the LGBTQ lifestyle, because he means for us to be fruitful and multiply. My thing is, when you start to attack children, and for any LGBTQIA plus elemental P, I don't know how many letters are, I don't care. For whatever adults are out there that won't condemn them targeting children, then the hell with them, right? I mean, that's how I feel about it personally. Maybe that seems a little extreme and radical. But if I'm black and I say, hey, black people need to be treated fairly, black people need to be treated better, but I'm willing to ride in on the coattails of people who I know are sellouts or people who I know have a dark and perverted agenda, then that falls on me too. It's the same for the LGBTQ, right? So I'm not saying that we should just blindly follow these people into some moral and ethical abyss, but I'm saying there's a line out there that the adults in our movement can draw and feel confident about upholding and with righteousness. Yeah, if you want to be gay at home, your citizenship allows you to do that. We can't stop it. Even furthermore, our justice system is so wholly inadequate that we won't be able to properly adjudicate guilt or innocence in those places without having surveillance in your home, which is a step too far for citizenship. But we're not going to let you go after the children. That's a hardline non-starter.
I'm certainly with Royce on that. Here's the other thing I was going to say. So as Christians and just rational thinking people, that you always wrestle with, like, reevaluating your own thoughts. Am I right about this? Am I reading scripture properly? It's like, it's just good, healthy behavior to go back through everything. I am so 100% convinced that we're correct about this because it's how we were made. Humans wouldn't exist if you were supposed to be gay. There wouldn't be any of us. If you were supposed to be trans, there wouldn't be any of us. We'd been gone a long time ago. These discussions wouldn't be happening because we wouldn't exist. So I'm so 100%, even if you don't believe in God, believe in biology, right? And so for us, we read scripture, we know where it comes from. But for anybody else, this is where Matt Walsh, who tries to argue outside of the realm of scripture, which I don't agree with, but he can do it in this case. And it's like, this is just how it has to work. Like, one thing I don't like, that the LGBT crew, the Alphabet Mafia, loves to tie themselves to racism because they get to say that, look, your natural inclination was to be racist, and that was bad. And so you have terrible natural inclinations. And it's the same thing with this. Well, it's actually not true here. Your natural inclination to reject homosexuality and the trans agenda is correct. It's biology. You reject that, and that's a good thing. So they tie it to the race thing, saying, well, you're wrong here, so you're also wrong here. And it's just because you're a natural bigot to reject it all, but it's not true. Your natural inclination to reject it all was exactly the way it should be. And so Delano touched on this a little bit last week, I think, in a different topic, but in the same idea when it was with Bryson. I just want for it to go back to the shadows. Where I'm with Royce is like, don't put a camera in my house. I don't want any surveillance. I don't need anybody coming in to tell on me about who I'm sleeping with or what I'm doing. But I am telling you, we shouldn't have any parades about it. We shouldn't be comfortable talking about it. They've gotten so comfortable taking off their clothes and walking down the street during Pride Month because nobody had any courage to say, that ain't right, man, and I'm not supporting it. And I'm not gonna hang around you if that's how you're behaving. No different than, I don't wanna hang around you if you're drunk. I'm not into that behavior. I'm not going to the bars. During your moments of depravity, I'm not hanging out. And if that's who you are going to make yourself out to be, you're going to identify yourself and claim that your sexuality makes you who you are, you're doing that to yourself. So don't get upset with me when I say I don't want to be around that. You've defined yourself that way.
The other thing we've defined in this new culture, we've defined shame as wrong. Like no one should feel any shame. And I totally reject that. And I say this, I say it in all seriousness. People hear it as humor and think that I'm just joking, but I say it in all seriousness. Like, when I'm on the Stairmaster, when I'm working out, there is a shame that I feel that I've gotten this overweight and have to do this. And that's a healthy feeling. I'm just sorry. Doesn't make me feel good, but I feel shame. Today, I try to eat one protein bar in the morning while I'm working. And I can remember the moment this morning when I had the second protein bar, and I felt shame over it. I really authentically did. Shame is a good thing. And we've made it like, oh, no one should feel any shame about anything that they do, and I completely reject that.
Slight disagreement with the wording on this. I read a great book by an author who I hate now. She's ultra woke. Her name's Brene Brown. Can't stand her. She's the worst. But she wrote a really good book called Daring Greatly, and she delineated between shame and guilt. And shame says, I am bad. That's not fixable. Guilt says, I just did something stupid. I need to fix that. And so I think we should all feel guilty about all sorts of stuff. That's a very healthy idea. Shame is no different than the Game of Thrones shame. It's like, that's unfixable. She's walking down, she's doing her walk of shame. You've already done that. That's it. It's over. So that would be my only quibble, and it's, depends on how you define the word.
Royce, you got a thought on shame? While I'm headed to the dictionary to look up the word shame, just so you got anything? Should I feel shame about being fat?
Well, I think number one, I think the American government and the food industrial complex has done a great job to help you along with that. So no guilt that we don't all carry, no shame that we don't. I think shame is more of an outward expression of one's guilt in terms of how other people view you. Guilt is a more Christian idea, I would say. So I would agree with TJ. Guilt is more, I feel guilty because of it being gluttony and it being a sin against God. Shame is more, I'm ashamed or I feel guilty about the way it makes me look to others, which is really not significant in respect to the latter.
Hold it. I just went to the dictionary. I'm going to disagree with you and TJ. I think the dictionary backs me up. Shame, the painful feeling arising from the consciousness of something dishonorable, improper, ridiculous, etc., done by oneself or another. I don't feel bad about having shame about overeating.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go to the Bible and tonight, and we you know what, we may talk about this with Anthony and Virgil this week with Tennessee Harmony, but I'm
Here's guilt: the fact of having committed a specific or implied offense or crime, and so this suggests it may be towards somebody else, but you could get an offense against yourself. You by gluttony is an offense against your own body.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, it depends on your definition. I know, like, one of the things that they'll talk about in parental books, which I'm beginning to explore now with a 2-year-old and who loves to push the line, and you figure out, she says no, right?
You waited until after having kids to learn how to be a prayer?
Yes.
Like everybody else?
Yes, exactly. It's not something you can, here's what happens. I can tell you exactly how it happens. She does something, and you say, for the first time, I don't know how to handle this. I better go read a book.
Oh.
And so that's it. But anyway, in these books, they say, like, one of the worst things you can say to a kid is shame on you. And it's just, as opposed to, it's like your natural response is just telling this kid, you're bad, instead of, we don't act that way. Like, actually, one of the best pieces of advice, it's worked wonders for my sister, and something we're gonna use too, is we don't do that, we're Mo's. And they're like, oh, we don't do that. We in our family, you can do that because you're not a Mo, but sorry, Mo's don't do that. And it's just a sense of, we don't like to use the word pride around here, but a sense of pleasure for who you are and backing it up. And so you do learn some good things once you get to be, and again, at almost a 2.5-year-old now, you start pushing limits and learn little tricks like that.
Royce, I'm gonna let you go. We were gonna talk about Tim Scott and The View, but Steve Kim can be very prickly if we're too late with him. God curses me out in Korean. Is Korean a word, or what is Korean a language?
I think so.
It is Korean. You can speak Korean.
Kenny, you're pretty smart.
Yeah. Okay.
No? Don't know?
Kenny, you're not. Christian's nodding his head, but I don't. Christian, did Christian go to? Did you go to college, Christian? No. All right. Never mind. We don't have to.
Yeah. Korean's a native language for 80 million people.
All right. So anyway, he curses me out in Christian.
Christian now.
Yeah. Did I say? What did I say? Cursing me out in Christian? Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Oh, curses me out in Korean. When we're a little bit late to get into him. But hey, guys, I want to tell you about another partner we have here. You've heard me talk about them before. Consistent with our values, just in the name alone. Very consistent with our values. Bank on yourself. Have you been given bad advice about your retirement savings? Were you told to max out your 401k? The Wall Street Casino loves to roll the dice with your hard-earned life savings. But the only thing Wall Street guarantees is that they will always get paid, whether you win or lose. Thankfully, there's a better way to grow your nest egg. Bank on Yourself is a guaranteed and predictable way to grow your hard-earned money. This retirement plan alternative gives you 100% control of your money, plus tax-free income in retirement. Bank on Yourself provides guaranteed, predictable growth in retirement income with no luck, skill, or guesswork required. You'll know what your tax rate will be in retirement, 0, under the current tax law, which protects you from the coming tax tsunami. You're also in control. Unlike 401ks or IRAs, with Bank on Yourself, you get access to your money for any purpose at any time with no questions asked and no government penalties or restrictions on how much income you can take or when you can take it. Get the peace of mind that Bank on Yourself provides. You'll know the guaranteed minimum value of your retirement savings on the day you plan to tap into them and at every point along the way. Now get a free report with all details on how Bank on Yourself strategy adds guarantees, predictability, tax savings, and control to your financial plan. Just go to bankonyourself.com/fearless. That's bankonyourself.com/fearless. No better time to do it. I sit around and think, I told you all that, I recently bought some gold. I'm paranoid. I don't care if people say I'm paranoid, because I am. And that's why Bank on Yourself is such a good thing, because the stock market is crazy. These banks are crazy. That's why you need to bankonyourself.com/fearless. All right, so after you do that, send me an email, fearlessblazeshow@gmail.com. Korean Cosell, Steve Kim, next.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Hey, what up, y'all? It's Trending Sharp, aka Uncle or Auntie Day Day, America's #1 bronze sexual. Kwame Brown think he won't get smoked? Tell him,
Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless. Oh, whoa, Skip.
he don't want these problems. No, sir. Dylan Brooks, John Morant, Brett Favre, these
Skip.
don't want it with they. It's like my granny told me. I got a basketball Jones, and his name is Bill Russell. Yeah, Skip. My granny had a thing for Bill Russell. You think I love LeBron? I ain't got nothing on how my granny felt about Bill Russell. Broke her heart when Bill kept marrying them pink toes. Yeah, Uncle Zay got a hankering for pink toes too. I hope Bron don't find out.
What the Skip?
I'ma get kicked out of the Nation of Islam. You gotta give up pig skin and pink toes to join the nation. Bronze sexuals, I am the throat goat.
Yeah, 모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Isn't that I'm back just to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Time for some Korean Cosell, Steve Kim. Steve, it looks like you got a new shipment of Just for Men hair coloring. You look 10, 15 years younger than you did yesterday. Am I accurate with that?
You know,
Did you just dye your hair? Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I do that. You know, I was going to go with the Jimmy Johnson chrome bumper. But you know what? Call me Jet Li Black. And by the way, on this day in 1984, Jimmy Johnson was hired by the University of Miami. It was truly Camelot. It's never been as good since. But you know what? Wow. Woo! Oh, my God. You know what? Let's get back to my show.
Steve, you got me on a little bit of a tangent. I saw the other day Jimmy Johnson retweeting you and adding a comment. Are you guys friendly? Does he know you're his biggest fan?
No, not really. I really don't tag people, even that I follow. I'm a great admirer of Jimmy Johnson. I will say this. There's that old question about if you could have 3 other people at a dinner for one night, who would it be? He would he would be one of them. But I will say this, it would not start off well. The first question I say, Jimmy, it is great to have you. Let me pour you a nice ice cold Heineken. But then I just want to get this out of the question immediately. Why the hell didn't you give the ball to Alonzo Highsmith in the Fiesta Bowl? But from there, it'd be a great dinner. And I think the other 2 people would be Marvin Hagler, God rest his soul, I never got to meet him. And the 4th guy at my table, probably maybe like a Malcolm X. I mean, it would be an eclectic group. Good foursome, don't you think?
Jimmy Johnson.
Yes.
Marvelous Marvin.
Yes.
And Malcolm X.
Yes. And me.
That's it. and Steve Kim. TJ, I know we're not prepared for this. Steve Kim overtakes the show sometimes. Did we even ask for who his other two were? No, but he threw it in. Anyway, he overtakes the show. You're not prepared for this. 3 people if you could go to dinner with, name them.
Warren Buffett.
Buffett, why Buffett?
He's just a brilliant investor, knows a lot of things. But, Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell.
Yep. And then I need a spiritual leader of some sort. Historical spiritual leader. Come back to me on that.
I gotta. Warren Buffett, Thomas Sowell, those are both economists, by the way, or Thomas Sowell is a historian and an economist. Yeah. You're very focused on money, Warren Buffett. Marvelous. While he's thinking, I'm gonna give you time to think of the third person before, because now this gives me time to think. Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Do you think he's the greatest boxer of all time or something, Steve? Why Hagler over Ali or someone else?
You know, that's a very good question. And by the way, Thomas Sowell would be my number 5 guy if someone couldn't make it. I'd send out that reservation and RSVP to the fine Mr. Sowell. Marvin Hagler, to me, is a very special figure. I think, you know, and you guys know this as sports fans, the athletes that you idolize as a young kid or young adulthood, when you're really naive about what sports is and they have an outsized influence on your life, they hold you forever. And Marvin Hagler in the 1980s, to me, as Muhammad Ali had retired, Ray Leonard had taken a lot of hiatuses due to his eye, Marvin Hagler, to me, was my favorite boxer. He's my first favorite fighter. He's the guy that, to me, when I look at him and his silhouette and his images, he just reminds me of what a fighter is. And you listen to the stories of what type of person he was. He wasn't perfect, but I think he was an incredibly good, decent man and one of the most loyal people ever. I mean, I've talked to Bob Arum for days about this because he's the guy that promoted him his last 17 fights. To me, he embodies everything good about boxing and boxers.
TJ, you got your third person yet?
Yeah, I'm just off. I'd have to rethink all these, but Billy Graham would be my third today. That would be an interesting conversation of old folks and.
Well, the problem for me is I've met a lot of people, and so I'm not going to put people I've met on the list.
You need dead guys. You need dead guys. Go back in history.
Yeah, well, I am going to actually go. My first person would be Mike Royko, the legendary newspaper columnist that died out of Chicago. And then, guys, I'm going to tell on myself to tell you, that it's still a struggle for me. I'm going to let you know that it is still a struggle for me, but I'm going to keep it real. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. And these 2 picks will be very controversial. And it will lead to questions about me, but you know what? It won't even lead to questions. It'll confirm everything about me. And I've talked about one of these people all the time, and you won't be surprised. So I'll just say that name first. Tamron Hall would be at my dinner. And then the second name, and I'm just keeping it real, and I'm going to get crushed for this, but I'm going to be honest. Sarah Jessica Parker.
What?
Played Carrie Bradshaw on Sex and the City.
So, I mean, you're aware the night stops after dinner. That's it. All you get is the dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're married. The night stops after dinner. I'm not married.
This is a 2-hour conversation. You go home. Are your picks still the same?
I get my shit. Now, both of them are married. So, but anyway, that I just told on myself.
And you think that, but to be honest, you think that would be the most interesting conversation?
Yeah.
For me, yes.
Really?
For me, I'd have Royko there to talk about journalism and the state of the industry.
You wouldn't like to talk to like Abraham Lincoln or, I mean, there's a list of people who could fill it. You got so many. You're one of the most curious people I've ever met.
Lived in the 1800s.
Yeah.
He's gonna smell terrible. They don't shower regularly. They don't bathe regularly. He's gonna.
I didn't say we had to go back to the time that they were living in to have dinner with them.
He's not in the habit of showering regularly. No, not Abraham Lincoln.
All right.
Yeah. So
Jason.
Anybody from that era, go ahead.
Jason, I'm surprised Malcolm X or Elijah Muhammad, given what you've said about them in the past, you went to the Million Man March. They did not make your top 10, at least?
Well, this is only the top 3.
8 of 10 are women.
I've read Malcolm X's book. What's he gonna tell me that I haven't read in his book? And I've read his book probably a half dozen times. I feel like I know him well. You know, if I invite Martin Luther King, he's going to compete for attention from Sarah Jessica Parker and Tamron Hall.
He might win it, too.
Oh, God.
Based off all the reporting. So I don't want competition there.
Oh, no.
What about JFK?
Geez.
Wonder if he knew what he was getting into. See, it's like when you go down this road, the question, this is why I said, like, you're one of the most curious people. The questions that we have, we could actually find the people that had the answers, but we're not.
I'm trying to think if there's somebody because again, Ralph Wiley was my the 4 journalism people that I idolize: Mike Royko, Ralph Wiley. Ralph Wiley and I were great friends. David Simon and I used to communicate regularly. Now he hates me. Hates is strong, but he's unfollowed me over Twitter and disavowed me. And then Michelle Alexander, big fan of hers, was a big fan of hers. Now I think the new Jim Crow deal is out of context and not so.
Didn't you just tell us a couple weeks ago that you thought her whole book was blown up by the statistics you found?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's why I wouldn't want. That's why she's not on the list.
Got it.
Those are the 4 people. You know, my company RWSA is Royko, Wiley, Simon, and Alexander. I'm a big Jim Brown guy. I spent a lot of time with Jim Brown. I don't need to go to dinner with Jim Brown. I paid for dinners for Jim Brown. I paid for,
Muhammad Ali.
Too much is known about him.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most overexposed superstar. I mean, there became a running joke in boxing circles, TJ Mo, that it was really funny. So a new company would announce, hey, we have a new documentary, groundbreaking, on Muhammad Ali, and boxing Twitter would say, yeah, to go along with the other 184 that have been produced the last 30 years. Like, it became too much. One more name for my dinner rotation. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying Alex Jones. He would be a fascinating guy to spend dinner with.
Alex Jones isn't a bad.
That's a good one.
That's not a bad choice. For me, I wouldn't take Trump because uncontrollable conversation. Yeah. And let's say it's only 2 or 3 hours. He may speak for an hour and 45 minutes of it, and he may not be talking about anything that I'm interested in.
Yeah. Or anybody else.
Yeah.
And you'd have to just praise him the whole time. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or he's going to praise himself, right? He's going to get the praise one way or the other. I didn't go down this road, but if they were required to tell us the truth, I would love to sit with somebody like George Soros. Like if you're going to the other side, some of the people who have like provided the destruction of America, if you had to tell me the truth and I had to get some, there are some people on the other side that I'd be interested in talking to.
I'm sure now that I'm sitting here thinking about the music industry, would I want to talk to Michael Jackson? Nah, too much of a weirdo. Love Michael Jackson, but he's a weirdo.
Prince?
No, not Prince. Not R. Kelly, because I love R. Kelly's music, or I used to love R. Kelly's music. I still like R. Kelly's music.
I still do. Let's admit it, Jason. We still do.
Yeah.
Come on.
Bill Cosby.
Don't keep that on the down low.
Be interesting, but I don't find Bill Cosby that funny. Dave Chappelle would be very close to inclusion on my list.
Yeah. That was a good one.
That he would be. I feel like I could get some truth out of him.
Again, if everybody's required to tell us the truth and the real truth, not like some of your position on Chappelle is that like, of course he's a Trump supporter. He's just finding a clever way to tell you about it. And so if these people actually answer our questions directly, tell me exactly, JFK, did you know what was about to happen to you? Right? Soros, do you know that you're funding the destruction of America? Is this intentional? Some truth, I got a long list.
Well, Steve, you've distracted me and distracted the show.
Thank you.
We wanted to talk about...
You're welcome.
Dave Portnoy and his future at Barstool. wanted to know if you had any thoughts on that. He's been kind of vocal that he's got 20 months left on his contract. The brand has pivoted and gone quite a bit of different direction. That Mincy guy got fired, and Dave's not happy about it. He's actually rehired the guy personally. He's admitted, Dave has, like, yeah, I built up the company and I sold out. And, you know, I give him credit for that type of honesty. Dana White has made some recent comments, I think in late May, that, you know, Barstool's going to head down the toilet ever since they sold out to Penn Gambling. What do you think the future for Dave Portnoy is at Barstool? Do you think he re-ups with Barstool, or do you think he's milked that cow and he just moves on to a bed of cocaine and prostitutes, and he becomes the Hunter Biden of you know, celebrity millionaires?
Yeah, and also pizza. So it'd be cocaine, prostitutes, pizza, and the rest of the money he'll just squander, right? Here's the issue. Here's the thing that old line from Tug McGraw. I can't take credit for that one, but anyway, I wonder, Jason and TJ, was Dave Portnoy a little bit naive into what he was getting into? I know he said a couple of weeks ago, yeah, I sold out. I wanted to sell out. But I wonder if he understood exactly what he was getting into, in a sense that I'm going to get this boatload of cash. I'm going to have riches forever that my great-great-great-grandkids can live off of. But even then, that comes at a price. And there's an intrinsic value when you are a Dave Portnoy to an entity like Barstool. I mean, it's one of the great American success stories of capitalism and media. Think about it. The guy, I think it was a gambling pamphlet, and he turns it into not only just a brand, but a media titan that's now selling for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And it's going to be a thing for a very long time. But he lost control of it because he said, no, I want more cash infusion. I want to take it to the next level. But at the same time, that means that you cannot really be the sole owner and proprietor of this property. And I wonder, what is the value of that? I mean, look, you could have $1 billion, but there are certain things in life that are priceless. And I brought this up on Coach JB's show earlier this morning, guys. Let's say you had $250 million only. Poor guy, we're going to have to do a GoFundMe campaign, right? And then someone said, no, you're going to give up the control of your company, and we're going to give you $500,000. I have a question, because I've never been in this position. Are people's lives perceptibly better and improved from $250 million to $500 million, and while you lose control of something that you consider your baby?
I don't think their lives are drastically improved.
Or changed at all.
Yeah, or really, I don't. And I don't want to sound simple and schmaltzy or smarmy or whatever, but I can legitimately say that money does not increase your happiness.
No.
And or fulfillment. And I'm one of these weird people that I'm telling you, I could go back to me and my dad in a 400 square foot apartment and be happy. I was happy then. Mm-hmm. I didn't even, I mean, I knew I was poor, and I knew that, you know, it's not, I wasn't 1,000% comfortable, but I was happy. And I was the captain of my football team, and we won the state championship, and I had all kinds of friends, and you know, my life was, I socialized, people loved me, even though, you know, poor, and not a lot of my classmates were living the way that I was. I think I could still survive and be happy in a raggedy car and a,
You might have to if the globalists get their way. So here's the only thing I'll tell you about money in general, the stuff that I think about as my brother and I building a real estate business and all that. The only reason I care about acquiring more money is it's actually to do the opposite of some of what we see these guys do. I want to be able to buy time and watch my kids grow up. Like my dad coached me in football. He owned his own business. And so from the time I was 7 years old until I graduated high school, he was on the sideline for every game I ever played. That's what I want. And he made enough money and created the freedom to be able to do that. If you're working a 9 to 5 and you're just making ends meet, it's very hard. You got to provide for your kids, right? The Bible says a man who doesn't provide for his kids is worse than an unbeliever. You have to provide for your kids. That's your first thing. But wouldn't you like to also participate in helping them? So that I want to get to the point where I have choices and I don't have to sit there and scrape by. And it's just, I want enough money. So that's why I said my life wouldn't change from $1 million to $250 million. It wouldn't change much. But it will change from, they say about $60,000 based on studies doesn't change your happiness. And I think once you get that means you're comfortably paying your bills and hopefully you've got some time to spend with the people you love and you have choices about, do I want to work extra and get some overtime this week? Or do I just want to go home and coach my kids? And that, I think, is the whole point of money in my view.
Yeah, I sit here and think about the number, and Steve, I think you can relate to this because you got a mother that I think you take pretty good care of. Yeah. That's where I get the most satisfaction is the people that I'm able to help, and that brings me the most enjoyment in life, and that's where I do place a value on money. If you compared my SAT scores, my discipline, my grades to both my brother and my sister, I'm in last place every time. I had this little special gift of original thoughts and ideas or whatever, but I'm not as good a person as my brother. I mean, that's just a fact. And I'm not as disciplined as him. I don't have his work ethic, reliability, but I do have this gift of writing and ideas, and it's made me quite a bit of money. And so I like to share with my family and people that I care about, and that's where money is important. And I'm not trying to, paint because again, the money I've blown on dumb stuff and I got a lot of regret about it. It's
fun at a couple of those casinos in Vegas. Huh?
At least a couple floors. The VIP elevator at the Whitlock shoot. But guys, what's interesting about the situation with Portnoy? There's a couple things that money cannot buy. That is power and control, which he no longer has at Barstool. Now, other thing that I could relate to, because I'm not in that position, is the thing that you cannot buy, and which is absolutely priceless. And TJ, I think you realize this better than both of us because you are a father, is time. There's a phrase from older gentlemen that always say that the days are long, but the seasons are short. And all of a sudden one day, your kids right now, they're going to be graduating high school, then they'll be getting married, and they'll be having grandkids. And you wonder yourself, wow, where did that time go? Time to me is the most precious commodity that I have. In my particular situation, when I made the decision to depart ESPN and a six-figure salary, I just did not want to be there under that atmosphere and what they were going to make me do in terms of my own thought process. But now you got to have a little faith in yourself. So my personal position is now I have various streams of income, various jobs, gigs such as this, and I made a couple of rules. Number one, I have to like everything that I do and the people that I do it with. It has to be fun. And I'm not going to do anything that's going to take up more time than I want. And fast forward to 2023, I'm making more money now working no more than 12 to 15 hours a week. And I turn down jobs because I tell people what you're going to pay me or what you're offering is simply not worth my time. And there are days now where I just go to my office in East LA and I'll just read a book. Just read a book and that's it. And I'll learn something. Or I go on YouTube and watch a few things and research. But the days of me working 40 hours, and I ask this of young people all the time that ask me about my career, how I handled it. I said, you're going to have a decision to make one day. Would you rather work 15 hours a week and quote unquote only make, let's say, $200,000? Or would you rather work 55 to 60 hours to make $1 million? Personally, because I'm not in that situation where I have that many people to support, I don't have 3 kids, I'd rather have my time and peace of mind, because those things cannot be bought.
No, that's the thing, and that's the catch-22, right? Because you work as hard as you can to support your kids and give them everything that you can, and then you spend no time with them because you're working so hard and then you can't do it.
Yeah.
And so we're going through this right now in my life. My wife works. She works from home, but she works, so we have our kids in a Christian daycare and all that. But my daughter, who turned 2 in April, is progressing so quickly that every week we notice she's developed a new skill. She's beginning to talk in full sentences. It's like one thing after the next. It's like the discussion is not, hey, are you quitting your job soon? It's like, can you quit by the end of the summer, or are you going to quit at the end of, like, when are you quitting next? We have to get her home so that the kids are home so we can watch. So that's the struggle. Once you start having kids, you're stuck as a man. You're like, I got to go make money so that my wife doesn't feel pressure for herself to make money, so she can stay home and feel secure and all that. That's one of a woman's top needs. But the second thing is like, but I want to be home pouring into them too. I'm not reading these parenting books for no reason. I want to use it, right? And so it is a tough dilemma, one of which Dave Portnoy is not concerned about as the world's oldest frat boy.
Well, not, some people would still call me a frat boy, and I'm older than Dave. So he's got some competition. Steve, I want to move on to another topic. Gambling in the NFL continues to make news. Indianapolis Colts defensive player, I believe, Isaiah Rodgers, I believe is his name.
Yes.
Caught being investigated for gambling. We've seen, 5 Detroit Lions players suspended or disciplined for gambling. This whole gambling thing into the mainstream of sports, I think it's inevitable that these athletes, with their level of knowledge of what's going on, and there's accusations that he gambled on Colts games, and the whole, it does not surprise me. They have opened up a can of worms that this is going to be a constant problem. Anytime you got guys in a locker room making between $600,000 a year and $50 million a year, there's going to be guys making $600,000 that want to live like the guys that are making 50, and they're going to cut corners to do it. I don't know what Isaiah Rodgers is making. Let's say he's making $1.5 million. That sounds great to people on the outside, but if you're inside a locker room where several of your teammates are making $15, $20 million a year, and they're flashing all that money, it's not great. People are going to cut corners to do it. This is going to be a never-ending, constant problem for the NFL and these pro sports leagues.
Jason, my view is this. Has the NFL and these other sports leagues let the wolf into the hen house? Absolutely. Is there a whole hypocritical nature to all of this? Yes. The organizations and the leagues are making money off gambling, and then players are now being suspended for the very same thing that they are sponsoring. However, with that said, Jason, the NFL Players Association, and when they do these rookie symposiums, their speeches and their message should be, doesn't matter, don't ever gamble at all. I mean, just think about this, just from a practical standpoint. The average NFL career is actually less than 4 years, right? And outside of the top 2%, these guys who are quote unquote average run-of-the-mill players, it's not really a career. It's an opportunity to get a head start in life. So why squander your money on a 4th SUV, a 3rd baby mama, a vacation home that you don't need, okay? Or Pookie's record label deal because he wants to be a rapper at age 40. No. Save your money. Save your money and do the right things. Because and you know this, Jason, 98% of gamers or gamblers lose. And I'm not making a moral or ethical judgment on Isaiah Rodgers.
I do know this.
Yes, okay, very well. In fact, you got a PhD in it. Isaiah Rodgers is a solid enough athlete. He's going to make a career or whatever he has left of it. All that money he spent, and again, I'm just talking very practically, he could have put that into a Roth IRA, a tax shelter, a T-bill, something, an annuity. And so when these players, this is what bothers me about a lot of the players that complain, and I hear this in boxing. The game took advantage of me, and I left with nothing. That's because you never invested into yourself or anything else. It was frivolity. that got you here. To me, gambling is frivolous. It's a very risky endeavor unless you're Bill Krakenberg, one of those professional gamblers. Everyone else loses. So I think the players just have to have like almost a no-fly zone policy personally in terms of, yes, I can gamble, but I never should.
I'm trying to confirm this, and I'll just say it and look it up later, but I'm pretty sure the NFL has a 100% match on their 401k stuff. And so I think after your first year, back when I was playing, it's like you could put up to 18,500 in, and they put 12 in. And then after like your first year, I think it's 100%. And whatever, don't quote me on that, it doesn't matter. And they were begging players to do it and couldn't get them. It's like, This is, I mean, it's just, the financial literacy inside an NFL locker room is so unbelievably bad. I remember Tavon Austin, who, he's a first-round pick. He was with the Rams. And somebody asked him to go, he said, man, check hadn't dropped yet, I can't go. It's like, how much money? He's like, low on funds, man. How much money did you spend? I've seen your signing bonus. You can't go out with your friends. How much money did you plan on spending tonight? And so that is the financial literacy inside the locker room. You're exactly right. I mean, the fastest way to lose your wealth is to hang out with people wealthier than you. I mean, that is the fastest way you could possibly lose your wealth. And Steve's exactly right. I made, by the standards of NFL, very little money, but I still got an NFL contract for a year. And all that was, because I had good parents and great guidance, was seed money to go start a business, which I sold last year. And so it just keep rolling it over. But it's like, if I was hanging out with the NFL guys and blew all that money, it's like you never had a career. There are guys that played for 5, 7, 8 years that come out and you'd think they just got out of college. That's how much money they got left.
You should. I'm sitting here thinking about I was 26 years old, I think, when I got to Kansas City in 1994, and made a name for myself. And by 27, 28, I'm friends with Derek Thomas. And Derek Thomas loved to hang out at this strip club, Diamond Joe's. And so he told me to meet him meet me down at Diamond Joe's. He wanted to tell me some information. And so I'm going as a journalist or whatever. But I started hanging out with Derek Thomas at Diamond Joe's. It's one of the worst financial decisions I ever made in my life. And I made decent money. I think at that time, I'm probably making $140,000, $150,000 a year. This is in 1994, 95-ish. But I'm hanging out with a guy that's making $3 million a year. Mm. And we're hanging out at a strip club. And it's stupidity. And then and that's actually, Derek Thomas is how I met Troy McSwain. Yep. And Troy, again, was making clothes for Derek Thomas, all these custom suits. And so I got to get custom suits from Troy. You start doing what they do.
Yeah.
And then I can remember I had this, Mike Bolano, I'm sure, am I screwing up Bolano's name? Anyway, Mike or someone in his family out there, the Bolano family in Kansas City, I apologize if I'm screwing up, it's not Mike, but Derek introduced me to the Bolano family, or maybe Joe from Diamond Joe's introduced me to, and the Bolanos own a jewelry store. I have them make me a big custom gold chain so I can look like the NFL players. Wore the thing 3 times in its entirety. And then I got embarrassed of it, put it in a drawer, never wore it again. And when I moved from Kansas City, it was still there. I just threw it in the trash. This is a gold, and I threw it in the trash because I was disgusted that I ever bought it. It had value. I could have had diamonds in it and all that. I could have sold it, done something with it, but I was so disgusted. Like, this is the big, I held the thing for 10, 15 years, wore it 3 times. And, by that time I'm snapping out, over the course of years, I'm snapping out of my delusion or whatever. But yeah.
Same place you got that earring?
No, I got the earring. The earring actually was a good investment under my framework. And I'm in Vegas and I win a bunch of money. I win $20,000 shooting craps. And so I was like, man, I got to go buy something before I give it back on the craps table. And so I went and bought a $10,000 earring.
Or savings plan.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to get some. Went and bought a $10,000 earring and then lost the rest of the money back.
There you go. But before you move on, I went to, so Darion Thomas, who apparently was an unbelievable swimmer. Do you know Darion?
Yeah, that's Derek's son.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. So the stories he would tell us about Derek, he said he lived his life as recklessly as he played on the field. And I don't remember the detail of the story, but it's like, Derek didn't spend a lot of time in his life, but when he would see him, he's like, oh, we'd stay up all night. We'd stack pizza boxes up to the ceiling. I mean, just one stupid thing after the next.
Yeah, Derek. For some reason I was thinking about Derek the other day. I was thinking about seat belts or whatever. Just Derek dies in this car wreck. And ice storm. They're trying to get to the airport to go to a St. Louis Rams football game, a playoff game. And Mike Tellis is driving. This is Derek's best friend, an older guy that took care of Derek, was like his assistant or whatever. Mike, good dude. And then there's a dude named White Boy John that also was like an unofficial assistant to Derek and knew them all. And so they get in a car wreck. Two people are wearing a seatbelt. I mean, one person is wearing a seatbelt, two people aren't. The two people not wearing a seatbelt died. White Boy John wearing a seatbelt walked away, never even went to the hospital.
Wow.
And so, yeah, he loved Derek, lived very recklessly. Steve, final conversation. Man, you just got me rambling today. This is
what I do on my show.
You just got me.
What I do on my show. We are eclectic here on the Steve Kim Show. By the way, I just respect to you as an intrepid young reporter, going to Diamond Joe's to do research and reconnaissance. That's why he made the big bucks there.
You are committed.
Why he made the big bucks, man.
Yeah,
that right there. That's real reporting. That is real reporting. Red Smith would be proud of you, young man. Jimmy Cannon.
This is the honest God truth. This is the truth. I broke so much news from hanging out at Diamond Joe's.
Yeah, come on.
Because guys would get to, because all the players hung out there, and guys would get to talking. They get liquored up, and they'd say things they weren't supposed to say. And,
that's the stuff of Pulitzers. That is the stuff. How you don't have at least two of those in the back of that background of yours on the trophy case is a crying shame. Bigger robbery than Whitaker Chavez. Jeez.
Financially good investment. Morally, not so great.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was a financial good investment. Let me pivot, Steve. Stephen A. Smith in the news or in Deadspin's crosshairs again. They're very upset because he's said some political things. I think this guy's name is Karan J. Phillips, one of the woke writers at Deadspin. Very upset that he's transitioned or transformed into a mouthpiece or puppet for the Republican Party. He's saying Stephen A. Smith is. Stephen, on his own podcast, basically said that Joe Biden is too old to be president and kind of insinuated Donald Trump is as well. Here, let's play the clip.
Because, ladies and gentlemen, without trying to engage in any kind of ageism at all, because I don't believe in it, there does come a point in time where there are certain jobs you don't need. It's not that you don't need to be working. It's not that you don't need to be living your life. It's not that you don't need to be living a very vibrant lifestyle or anything like that. But there are responsibilities that are far, far, far more extensive than, let's say, the typical 9 to 5 that somebody in their 80s may not need to be doing. I think the presidency is one of them. I do.
That irritated Deadspin. He's a right-wing sellout. Why is Stephen A. randomly talking politics on his podcast?
Well,
I don't get it.
Jason, that's why he got his own podcast. And it's not with ESPN, so he could kind of let loose, let his hands go. And by the way, that's a rather innocuous statement, isn't it? That someone in their 80s stumbles and falls on their face. Is it really that provocative to say, wow, he's getting kind of old? I mean, at this point, that presidency, if it was a movie, would be Weekend at Biden's. Or, I mean, really. Let's just be honest about it. Most people, when they turn 75 and they start to lose their faculties, are not in their physical or mental prime. But this is what I give Stephen A. Conservative a lot of credit. He decided, and I think he made a chess move here, saying if I wanted to really say what I think and not be restricted, I'm going to have to branch out on my own and create at least a subset of my own brand that is not under the ESPN umbrella. But as for this guy complaining, this is just more whining. This is more complaining. These guys are very childish. The bottom line is this. The headline should have read, Stephen A. Smith said something that I disagree with. Okay? And I think we need more people to respond instead of trying to placate these people, because I see this all the time in the media. Again, one of my favorite answers when people say, hey, Steve, how come you retweeted this or that? You just say it like this, very simple. Yeah, and seriously, that's it. It's really that simple. You have a right to disagree, and you're going to say things that I don't like, and guess what? I'll never complain about it.
I just don't think Stephen A.'s being authentic. I think he's pretending, like Steve says, to be political and say provocative things, but he's really not. He knows how woke ESPN and Disney are, and so he goes out and plays Republican light to try to have a more well-rounded audience and to try not to get swept up in Disney's wokeness.
You think Republican light, like, because I would still say there's no way he would ever admit to being on the right side of anything. He seems like he's not Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's Republican right. He's at best, he would be a Joe Manchin, and I don't think he is because he's a race baiter. So what I'm trying to figure out with Stephen A. is it seems to me, because he had Clay Travis on his podcast, that had some controversy around it. He's gone on with Sean Hannity, but he's also drawing these really stupid lines where he's saying, I would never engage with somebody like Tucker Carlson, the most interesting man on television. Wouldn't talk to that guy. So I don't know what he's doing.
Republican light.
I guess, but I mean, Democrats didn't used to be so weird. Like, all he's saying is, yeah, I'm willing to have a conversation with the people that you guys won't kill me over. That's. I mean, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Republican light, in your view?
No, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is running as a Democrat.
Well, right, and I think Stephen A. would too. You think Stephen A. is a Republican?
No, I think he's trying, again, Republican light is another way of saying rhino. Republican in name only. It's phony. It's
so you're saying Romney.
He's uniparty. He's just an opportunist. He's just trying to build a brand that's open to everybody.
Do you think there's a chance he knows that the sports world is collapsing and that he's going to have to expand outside of his stupid Jordan versus LeBron debates at some point once all this cord cutting is through and if he wants to keep a career? Because he's not that old. And at some point, you have to be more than just the sports guy when people are moving away from sports and the funding's gone.
Steve, I'm going to toss that in your lap. I'm going to toss that in your lap. Do you, because it's based on the theory that the sports world is collapsing. Do you think it is?
To a certain degree, but here's what I think. What Stephen A. just said right there in that clip is not all that provocative. Again, he said that an 85-year-old plus guy is not in his physical prime, and maybe he shouldn't be a president. That's not even all that partisan. I mean, let's just be honest about it. If that was a Republican who did the same thing and stumbled, I'd be like, boy, this is an issue. And I think there's a belief on both sides of the aisle, we need younger leadership in this country. Okay? So with that said, Stephen A. Smith believes that he is now a personality. Like, he wants to do other things. I think I read a story where he might want to start acting. So it's very obvious to me that Stephen A. in his own mind, hey, I'm more than just sports. I want to talk about more than just, LeBron versus MJ. I can do more. And I think that's one of the reasons why he created that particular podcast. But again, that particular statement that we played, Jay, I don't look at it as all that much pandering or all that provocative.
I'm trying to figure out, so you don't think, what I mean by the sports world collapsing is the funding from all of the cable bundles and everything being employed by all of these networks. You're not going to be able to continue to just get handed these $12, $14, $15 million jobs.
Listen, what I think you've said something interesting that could be true. You've said something very provocative, that the sports world is a bubble, a falsely inflated bubble, and that all these television contracts they're being able to command and all these myths of record ratings is more of a myth, and that the athletes are overpaid and the franchises are overvalued, and it could be like the tech bust balloon that busted in the early 2000s, I guess it was. And I do think that's a possibility, because I just don't understand how you piss on hardcore sports fans as hard as they have, and there's no serious repercussions to it. And so, to some degree, I believe, like, hey, this little false, phony world is going to collapse. They're going to have to quit printing money at some point, because that's what I think covers up for all the phony things that are going on in the world. They printed so much money, they just pay for anything. And whatever they're paying Jalen Rose, they might as well just set that money on fire. $3-4 million. He brings zero. I'm not trying to take a dump on him. He brings zero value to ESPN. And they're paying $3 or $4 million. And like ESPN's going through layoffs right now over the next 2 weeks, where they are going to jettison people that are making millions of dollars that bring no value. Jalen Rose is one of these guys that's possibly on the chopping block, and that's why he's bending over for Billy Porter. But I think some of the same things are true for athletes. I do. Like, paying these quarterbacks $40, $50 million a year, does it really make sense? Are they really that valuable? Or any of it? I don't know. Steve, I'm going to give you the final say, and then we're going to end your show.
Yeah, thanks, because I got to get out of here anyway. Got lunch calling. Stephen A. Smith has created an option. And that's the difference, though, TJ. A lot of these guys that you speak about that may be on the chopping block with these Disney layoffs, whether it's Mark Jones, Jalen Rose, Bomani Jones, whoever, Dominic Foxworth, although they may be protected because of their race. Let's just be very honest about it. But there's a lot of other plug-and-play announcers or personalities at that four-letter entity that you're right. They're not going to be missed. Jason, you're right. They don't bring any extra value, no real viewership. The ratings, I kind of bear that out. But Stephen A. actually did something. He created a brand, but then he built upon it. I actually give him credit because he said, you know what? I need to evolve and become more versatile in my skill set and to do more. Now, you want to talk about a guy that's a workaholic. I've read stories where he works well over 40, 50, almost 60 hours a week. I give him credit. That's a worker. That his work ethic is something that I really do respect. I don't always agree or respect what he says, but the work that he puts into it and what he's created, he can now live off that, whether sports is a part of his life or not.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for gracing us and accommodating us in your schedule today.
See you, Steve.
Awesome. We'll play some tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want